Welcome back. It's your host, Gabe Morales, continuing with our coverage of Mexican Mafia members over the past 60 plus years. So before we begin, I'd like to make one correction from the N last names in regards to Pete Nunez. He was not from San Pedro. I have no idea where I got that from, and I know he was no saint. He was from Huilamas, as shown on his chrono that I posted. We'll resume with the O's. There is a Isidro Shorty almost, who is from Playboy's East Side. The Playboys gang is very large, and they have a East Side, South Side, and West Side, as well as a North Side. And they're very big in my home state of Washington, with cliques spread all over that state. Understand that he even collected taxes from Playboys up in Stockton, which is another area where the gang is active. Shorty had a D number, N2341, and I understand committed a homicide in 1988, which gained him entrance to La M. He was housed at Folsom in 1993, the same year I left working there, and then was sent to Pelican Bay SHU during the 1990s through at least to 2016, and then was shipped off to Corcoran from 2016 to 2021, and has recently been housed at New Folsom State Prison. There was a Gilbert Ontiveros, went by Angel from Chiques. He had a B number, 4379, and I understand picked up another B number, 44796. He was MA in the early 70s and was involved in the beating of the Nuestra Familia Aranda brothers at CIM, but I understand fell out of favor short after that. There was a Rolando, aka Rolo Ontiveros, from the Lot, which is a big gang on the east side of Los Angeles. He was involved in a drive-by shooting in 1990 and was known to be a big dope dealer during the 1990s. He was involved in a carjacking in 1995, as well as a murder case of Richard Serrano. He was then indicted on the third RICO, but escaped down to Rosarito, Mexico. And I remember this guy being wanted, as seen in this picture here. He finally was arrested in early 2009, housed at the Orange County Jail in 2012. He stood trial and was given a life sentence and was sent to the BOP. He presently resides at USP Atwater. There was an Edward Chungo Ornelas from Eastside Clover. He hit CDC in 1980 and was given C number 12542. He became MA sometime after that and remained an Emero in the 1990s, was housed at Richard J. Donovan around 2016, and for the last few years has been housed at Solano. He is currently 73 years old. There was a Stephen Gato Oropesa. I show that he was from Hazard, but also had an address in Monterey Park, and had an A number, 54137. He was made MA sometime in the 1960s, and was housed at Folsom Prison in 1972. It's kind of strange, but I believe he was celled up with Cheyenne Cadena because Gato was sent down to CIM in September 1972, and Shy was sent down from Folsom in October 72. He was on the tier with Shy on December 17th, 1972, when he was killed, and I understand was one of his bodyguards. Then we have Alfred Chato Ortega from Laverne. He currently has an F number, 77972, and I believe was made MA in the 1990s. He hit CDC in 2007 on that number. I believe Chato is involved in taxing Tulare County Sureño gangs and has some other areas of control. Chato was housed at Pelican Bay from at least 2008 to 2012, then was at Tehachapi in 2016, and for the last few years has been housed at Centinela. We talk about an interesting individual named Carlos Pieface Ortega from Garrity Loma. He had an A number, 83889, and I believe was made MA about 1964. He was at San Quentin in the mid-60s with the Carnales, as seen here, and was the individual who stole Hector Mad Dog Padilla's shoes and gave them to his cellie, Robot Salas, since they did not fit him. He ended up dropping out in 1973 to Robert Mocha Morel in the gang task force. During that debrief, Pieface talked about how Juan, who I believe to be Juan Lips Valdez from the Nuestra Familia, was giving Shy Cadena and Robert Reese dirty looks. And at that point, Shy said he has to go to the cemetery. According to Pieface, Shy and Robert Ruiz were up on the 5th tier with Juan during evening chow time. And Robert Reese called Juan over, as Cadena was a point man, when they hit him. They ended up sending Robert Reese to CMC East in Shy Cadenas to San Quentin's Adjustment Center, where Pieface was already housed for a previous holiday he had conducted. When they got there, he and Shy talked about all the stabbings he had done and laughed and joked about it. He also mentions that Sleeping Bentoncourt then bragged about the guard he had killed at DVI Tracy in 1963. He said that he had knifed him beautifully and had no second thoughts about what he had done. And he discussed several other hits that Cheyenne Cadena had done. I'll probably do a special episode on Cadena, but if you recall, I've stated several times that he was very intelligent, but as Pieface's debrief shows, he was also very deadly. Pieface testified in the Shotgun Sanchez trial, which Shotgun got off on when he killed Raymond Ochoa with Ponce Amado in 1972. Understand that Pieface ended up dying of liver problems, probably from drinking and drugging so much over the years. I recall an individual named Greg Nidal Ortega. I think he was from Echo Parque, but I'm not sure. But I do have his C number, 59582, and I recall I had him at New Folsom segregation in 1991. He ended up later being moved to Pelican Bay, and I lost track of him after 2012. There was a James Jimmy Ortega from Huilamas. He also had a C number, 26160. I showed that he was at CRC in 1973, so would have had an N number, was convicted of a burglary in 1974, and was given 5 years probation. He then committed a bank robbery in 1977 and was sent to Lompoc with the other M. Carnales. When he got out, he committed a burglary in 1981, which is when he caught his C number. He was processed at CIM and then paroled in 1982. He then was sent back to the feds and did time at Atlanta in 1995, as well as Atwater in 2004, and was released in 2007. I recall Victor Shorty Ortega, who was from somewhere in LA County. He had a C number, 23996, and I remember him being a hitman in 1991. He then was sent to Avenal State Prison, and I lost track of him after 2012. Then we have Dennis Woody, a.k.a. Socrates Ortiz, who's from Compton. He's a longtime Mamero with a C number, 42223, and has been involved in Mexican Mafia politics since the 1980s. He was known to have a few areas where he collected taxes and was close to What of Sherm, Leon, from San Diego. I even understand that Woody has his hands in some of the prisons down in Baja. I barely flashed a recent news headline regarding the Orange County RICO trial convictions of 3 individuals and barely mentioned Crow Martinez as a figurehead in that case under the M's. I also mentioned Old Man Rob Aguirre in the first A as an Alpha episode, but another guy with his hands in the OC pot since 2016 has been Woody Ortiz, who, with the other 2 Carnales, oversaw a network of gangs that thrived on murder, extortion, robbery, and drug trafficking, according to the RICO indictment. He was housed in Salinas Valley State Prison in 2016 and then moved to Richard J. Donovan in 2020, where he is currently housed. I've talked a few times in other episodes about Donald Littleman Ortiz. Little Man was from Whittier. Now, I have been told by multiple sources that he was from Barrio Chico, but there are some guys who come from Whittier who tell me there is no such barrio. So if he's not Barrio Chico, where's he from? He had a C number, 39195, and was known to be an MM member in the 1980s, as he was a major drug dealer. But evidently, a lot of the Carnales didn't feel he was kicking back enough funds to them. He was put on the green light list, I believe, in the late 80s, and he was on and off that list for many years, and I remember him being housed on the same tier with MM members, and he was always very cautious, but I didn't hear a lot of masa talking between him and the other emeros. Maybe he was giving them some chiva at that time, enough to make them back off. He got out and then came back with a T number, 58785. He was housed at Pelican Bay SHU, and I understand there are multiple attempts on his life. But Little Man refused to lock up and then paroled in 2019. Finally, his luck ran out on November 21st, 2021 in Chino, California. My tío had a barbershop just blocks away from where he was killed. May they both rest in peace. There was a Joe Henry Ortiz. I believe he was from Maravilla. I'm not sure if El Hoyo or Lomita, but I do have his B number, 44845, and he was born in 1947. I understand he also was involved in the Aranda Brothers hit. There was Robert Smokey Ortiz. I think he was from Verdugo, but also possibly Pomona. As I stated before, a lot of these guys do move around a lot. He had a B number, 33009. He was born in 1941. I understand he was made inmate sometime in the early 1970s, and I heard he later on was killed by the Border Patrol. I would assume after being deported. There was Hector Crow Osuna from Hemet. He had a C number, 27908, and I believe was involved in a homicide in 1980, whereby he caught that C number. He paroled in 1984 and caught several violations between 1985 and 1995. He returned to CDC in 1997 on a K number, 65738, where he did about 15 years. And I believe he was released on the K number after 2012. And so I know that was a short one, but I wanted to finish up with the O's before I get into the P's. I hope you enjoyed this episode as I continue to finish off the alphabet of Mexican Mafia members over the past 60 plus years. For now, this is Gabe Morales signing off. Gangsters, cops, and politicians.